Hey everyone, Wags here from Eagle Dynamics. So, since the last talking head video I did, we took a look at the results, and like you, we weren't very satisfied with the results. It was rather time consuming, inefficient, and to be perfectly honest, it was pretty darn boring. So we decided to do a reformat of these. Rather than doing single shorter videos on a specific topic where things tend to get a bit repetitive, we'll do a much longer format video covering a broader set of questions. So let's get started. So the first question is, as a company, how did Eagle Dynamics start? How many are there in the team now, and do you think the team is the right size? So Eagle Dynamics started in 1991 between Igor Tishin and Nick Gray, and the first project was SU-27 Flanker. That was released in 1995. After that, the team grew pretty quickly. I guess when I first started working with them when I was at Ubisoft, they were about 60 or so, and that was early 2000s, and rapidly grew from there, where today we're about 170 folks spread across the world, all working remotely. As to the right size, we're always looking for new talented people, particularly the engineering side, whether it's AI, avionics, graphic systems. If you have the talent set that we're looking for, we'd certainly love to talk to you. Okay, next question. I often see complaints about slow progress. Perhaps users would be more patient if they knew more about the team behind our sim. Could you tell us more about the studio, what different teams exist, and what they're working on? So probably the biggest things we're working on right now, one, of course, is dynamic campaign, the instant action generator, a new onboarding, the world map, AI in general, AI flight models, updates to the mission editor, of course, the core engine, and the graphics, and probably a lot more. But each of these different tasks, of course, have their own teams, but different members within those teams may be working on different tasks at the same time. Now, but the biggest divide between all of this are those working on the core, the vast majority of our team, and those working on the paid modules. Now, something else to keep in mind too, of course, is prioritization, in that we have, even with 170 people, there's never enough time, never enough people to do everything we want to do. So it's very important that we kind of get the best bang for the buck on the resources available. And at times we'll have a single individual that to do a task, only that one person can do it. So we have to be very judicious in how we actually task our staff to make sure that we get the biggest benefit for the greatest amount of customers. Now, that doesn't mean that we make mistakes and can do things better. We certainly can, but it's never through a lack of dedication and effort. Okay, next question. ED are constantly bombarded by lists of things users want. Can you shed some light on decision-making process that goes into features for DCS? So it touches a bit on the previous question in that it really comes down to capacity of what we can do with time and resources. Now, in terms of new items and fixes for existing DCS items, it really comes down to the customer. It's what we're reading, what users want. We're, I think, very good about reading about our social media, so you have a pretty good feel for what the users want, and particularly we'll prioritize things that we could turn around faster rather than later. Now, that also has to be tied, though, to the fact that some of these wish items may be tied to other elements that could take longer and may not be as simple as they first appear. And in addition to that, we also have to balance that with our much longer term goals at the same time. Things like, say, dynamic campaign, the world map, and things like that. So it really is a priority balance of trying to give the users what they need, particularly in terms of gameplay and be able to complete missions, with achieving the much larger goals we have for DCS at the same time. Okay, question 4. What is the process for selecting an aircraft type to develop? What factors are included to determine if a module would be achievable? 3 primary factors. The first, of course, is it popular? Is it an aircraft that would sell? Not just for a segment of our hardcore community, but rather the larger flight sim community in general. The next big one is, does the aircraft fit really within DCS, which is combat aircraft from World War II to modern day? So obviously like a Sopwith Pop or 747 DCS is probably not the place for it. But, within combat aircraft, within those eras, yeah, probably. But again, it also depends whether or not it's an aircraft that we think a lot of people would enjoy flying. The third factor, of course, is, particularly for modern aircraft and systems, is the public reference information available. When we do say a fourth generation aircraft, it's very important that anything we put in that aircraft that we can point to a public reference to. Okay, next question. How does ED plan to keep DCS alive in the long term? Since we only have a finite number of aircraft that can be made into a module, is there a chance where you guys make FPS side to DCS? So you're right, there definitely is a finite number of aircraft, but there's a very long list of aircraft we can still do. So we're not too worried about that for quite a while. Now, in terms of first-person shooters, we're definitely committed to improving the ground element of DCS, but the FPS shooter is such a crowded market now and probably will be in the years to come. That's definitely not going to be a priority for us. However, I think armored vehicle simulation, like we do for the aircraft, would probably be much more likely than a first-person shooter. But again, for now, there's plenty of room for us to grow with aircraft still. Okay, question number 6. Hi, team. A longtime DCS flyer enthusiast with several thousand hours. What has been your most challenging or exciting DCS module, technology, feature to develop, and why? Well, we've been doing this a long time in a lot of different modules, so it's really hard to pick one. But I think some of the bigger ones have probably been the multi-threading, the new cloud technology, and even epiphany moments for the flight model and the radar have been very satisfying and gratifying to getting those right. I think the biggest challenge hasn't been so much an art or an engineering task. It's actually been community communications, in that trying to find the balance of keeping customers informed while at the same time not trying to overpromise and overhype the product at the same time. That's been a continuing challenge for us that we're trying to do better still. Okay, next question. What do you personally think ED does well and what it could do better? So I think there's some companies that do a large set of aircraft at a lower fidelity well, and I think there's some companies that do a very small set of aircraft at a high fidelity well. What I think we do well and kind of carved out a space for ourselves is a large number of aircraft at a high fidelity. I think that's what we probably do best. What we could do better, I think it comes down to communication. I think we need to be more transparent, less mystery, and I hope this video and future videos will be a step towards that. Okay, question number 8. Which follows on number 7. What do you think the community does well and what it could do better? So I think the two big things the community does really well. First is the mod community, whether it's the skins, the missions, the apps, different utilities, even some of the campaign systems are all so fantastic. And I really don't think DCS would be half the same if it wasn't for the mod community, particularly what it does for multiplayer in particular. The other big half, and it can sound like Nick, but thank you for your passion and support. It's really true. And this is really particularly true, I think, when it comes to all the testing and feedback, because even with our internal team and our external test teams, we miss stuff. And it's our community, you guys, that help us find that stuff and make a better sim in the end. Where it could do better, that's a tougher one. I think the biggest thing to realize is that me and the team, we're all human. We make mistakes, but we have a true passion for this. So we just ask for understanding and patience. And I know some customers get frustrated, but the nasty and personal attacks, they don't help us get a product done faster. It doesn't help fix a bug. It doesn't help the community because, again, we're human and it just makes us not want to share things that might upset customers. So we just ask to, again, have some patience, understand that we're not robots, that we will make some mistakes, but in the end, we have your best interest at heart. We want to make the best sim possible. and we just want you to come along for the ride. Okay, next question. Will further development of DCS get toward a more simulative or a more canonical video game approach? So it's very much a balance right now, but we definitely lean much more towards the simulative. And that, we are a sandbox simulation, and what we want to do is try to model all these different systems, from a sand system to an aircraft to a naval asset, as real as possible, so that players can, create their own simulated environment experiences. Now, there does need to be a set of rules, particularly for usability in some aspects of gameplay. But by and large, we definitely lean towards more of the simulative side than anything else. Next, are you planning to update or rework the early maps, mainly Caucasus and or Nevada, using new technologies and techniques developed for more recent maps? In a word, yeah. So I agree. Those maps are definitely starting to show their age, and we definitely plan to update those. So it's not so much a case of if, but when. Now, right now, as you might imagine, we're completely tied up map-wise with Afghanistan, Iraq, and Marianas World War II. So it's definitely not going to happen this year. But following that, once those maps are squared away, we're hoping that we can revisit these maps. Probably the biggest wrench in the works, which we're going to have to do a deep think on, is making sure that all the missions, and particularly all those campaigns that were developed for those older maps, will still be compatible with an updated map. So, short answer, yeah. Okay, on to question 11, which is there a map in the works for East Coast USA, South America, Greece/Turkey, the UK, Poland, or any other part of modern Central Europe? So I think at this point, since I record this video, the Cold War Germany map has already been announced. So you'll definitely get that last one there. As for the others, they're not planned at this point, but I think this is more a question about how we choose maps, not what maps we're doing right now. I think those are all pretty much announced. Just like aircraft, there's a decision process that we go through to design a map. And a lot of it, number one, of course, is would it sell? Is it a map within DCS's wheelhouse of combat aviation that would make sense? So this is primarily why we pick the maps we do. Has it seen combat? Is a active combat area in the past 20 years? Is it a big military training ground? We want some kind of tie-in to a military conflict of some sort. Now, in addition to the regional maps, of course, in parallel, we have been working on the world map, which would allow you to essentially, again, fly anywhere in the world. So, all those maps mentioned within the world map, yeah, you would certainly be able to fly any of those regions of the world. Okay, question number 12. We have a great selection of Cold War era jets in development. What can you tell us about maps to match these, e.g. Berlin, Fulda Gap, Baltic Sea, Korea 50s, Vietnam 60s, Syria 70s, Iran Iraq 80s, and Gulf War 1991. So hopefully you're overjoyed about the announcement of the Germany Cold War map, which should be right up your alley. As to the others, for example, Syria, Iran Iraq, and Gulf War, we already have maps for those or in development for more modern day, but at least for now, we'll have to make do for using those for a Cold War environment as well. Now, of course, third parties can create a specific Cold War map, but we really don't have any specific in mind yet for us. The exception, of course, would be Vietnam, which is very much on our want-to-do list. The big hurdle there is going to require some pretty significant additions and improvements to our train development kit to do that map right. So again, it's something we want to do very much, but no immediate plans right now. Next question. Can we have expanded maps instead of new maps? Is work underway unifying maps to bridge map islands in the same mission? So this is something we're looking into. However, in order to do this, we can't simply just expand an existing map. It would have to be part of a much larger update to the entire map. just because to have an old version and expand a new version would just be very jarring. It just wouldn't look well or work that well. In terms of having a bridge between different regional maps, again, it's just not possible due to many of the same reasons. Instead, what we're looking at is with the world map of having the ability there to be able to fly between detailed or regional areas. Okay, question 14. What should we expect from DCS world map? Are you guys going to model famous landmarks? How's the progress on the project? Any time frame in years that you guys could give to us customers? So all I can really say at this point is that the world map is very much in development still, but it's just an absolutely massive project that we're still honestly years away from delivering. I'm sorry to say. But work continues, and by the time we're done, we're looking to have about 80% of the entire globe covered, with the ability to have detailed regions in there as well. Now, as much as we'd love to have the budget and the resources of something like Microsoft Flight Sim, but we don't. But even so, with the current engine we have now that we're adapting to it, and with the ability to adapt the physics to do a whole world map, we think we'll be pleased with the end project. But again, it's quite a bit further down the road still. Okay, next question. What happens to our map DLCs if we get a world map? How are you planning to deal with the differences in detail between zones? So right now, it's just too early to know whether or not we'll be able to integrate the current regional maps into the world map. It's certainly something we want to do, but it's just not something we can guarantee at this point. Again, it's something we'll see. As you might imagine, trying to hand populate the globe, right now we're looking at probably about doing 80% of the globe, would just be a monumental amount of work. It's just not possible. Instead, what we're doing is we're actually developing the tools right now for automation, in that we can give the AI satellite imagery elevation data and allow it to then populate the Earth. So work is continuing. Again, we're very much more of an R&D stage right now of the world map. And as news becomes available, we look forward to sharing that with you. Next question. Will the world map be accessible through multiplayer DCS? And what can we expect of customization options in the mission editor? E.g., will creators have tools to override areas of the map to create scenarios? So we certainly plan multiplayer for the world map, but it probably won't be at the initial release. It'll come a little bit later. But we do plan the ability in the mission editor to allow creators to add, remove, and alter structures, as well as even override areas. The bigger question there is going to be about synchronization, which is still a little bit too early to talk about. Again, like I mentioned in the previous question, we're still in an R&D stage, so a lot of this is still being worked out. Okay, question 17. Will DCS ever receive multi-crew bombers, B-17, B-52, B-1 Lancer, and have you considered double-seat aircraft like the F-16D, the F-18CD? These would facilitate beginner education. So I agree. I think multi-crew bombers would be really interesting. The big issue we see right now is the size of our current regional maps, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. However, once we get the world map out a few years later, then it probably makes a lot more sense and something we'll probably revisit. As for the twin-seat aircraft, for training, I think we already have a pretty good set of trainer aircraft for beginner users. At this point, I'm not sure how much a dual-seat Viper or Hornet really bring to the game. That's not already there, but time will tell. We'll never say never, but it's certainly not in the plans right now. The next question is, Wags, me, recently said DCS as score is a game. What concrete steps are you taking to improve the game experience? Well, to be specific, I said a simulation game. And honestly, anything you play on your PC, it's a game. It's just what type of game we're talking about. But back to the question. There are certain things we're doing to improve what we consider the game experience. One, of course, is the in-game or in-mission save feature. Another is we're designing several new game modes. And last, we're doing a fair amount of work into data capture to allow the player to actually build out their pilot experience almost as a persona with rewards. And we'll talk about that hopefully in the not too distant future. Okay, question 19. Being a father and a DCS player is not always an easy mission. Almost always there's a time shortage to do all the flying I'd like. Can you add to save progress in the offline missions? We are. This is something we're actively working on right now that we hope to talk a little bit more about soon. In a nutshell, it's going to save the state of your mission minus maybe bombs, missiles, and rounds in the air. Other than that, it should save everything that's going on at that time. The next question is, does ED plan to implement more virtual squadron support into the game? Something that comes to mind is a group page that we can launch into servers and automatically have our aircraft link up in data link. Sure, absolutely. So this mostly revolves around customization options, as well as an improved friends list and squadron manager in multiplayer. We're just trying to improve the overall fly with friends features for multiplayer because we agree. We think this is an area that has a lot of growth potential that can really improve the multiplayer experience. And question 21. Will ATC communications be improved beyond basic functions, beyond taxi, takeoff, and landing? Oh yeah. So we've actually had a very detailed design work with multiple SMEs to have a really sophisticated, accurate, and realistic ATC system. The big thing we're working on right now is a new UI system rather than the rather dated menu system, and also how we're going to tackle the voiceovers being AI generated or human recorded. There's some pros and cons to both of those. So it's very much being worked on right now with those two items or in particular that we're trying to sort out. Okay, the next question is, are there any plans to implement a player-operated ATC inside DCS World? In fact, yeah, we're actually working on a lightweight program that would allow you to take part in multiplayer missions, both over voice and data, that would essentially place you in a ground object and allow you to act as an ATC controller. So still early on, but we look forward to providing a little more detail on this later. Question 23. Will pilot models be more animated in the future? Things like button and switch presses in cockpit, holding the canopy, grips during supercarrier launches, and mouth animations when using voice chat or giving commands. We are. Actually, if you take a look at the most recent pilots we did for the 16, 18, and Apache, I think you'll see much more advanced than previous pilots that we've done. But obviously, there's still room for improvement, many of which are some of the items you mentioned. And it's also a case where some of our third parties have done some really groundbreaking work on this that have really set a new standard that we will certainly match. So next, a popular question. Just as the supercarrier is full of life now, will we eventually have similar ground crew at airfields? Animated personnel for fueling, rearming, and marshaling would be amazing for overall immersion. So as you might imagine, right now we're still tuning up the last big stage we did for our supercarrier deck crew. But a lot of that we should be able to carry over to the airfields as well and actually be a lot less complicated. At first, we'll just probably be focusing on a crew chief and a marshaller. But first, again, we want to finish up the supercarrier. And once that's done, then we'll actually create a design specification and figure out exactly what we'll be doing for the airfield ground crew. But again, it is planned, but once we get supercarrier done. Okay, and the last question for today is, will ED eventually migrate DCS to another engine like UE5? What are the limitations of the current engine? So we have definitely no plans to move to another engine, as there's no other engine could do what we need DCS to do. It's been many years, but we've actually modified and updated DCS to do something very specific and very particular to what only DCS needs. There's just nothing else out there that can do what we need to do right now. So folks, that's the first 25 questions. I have another 25 ready to go. So I'll probably release that a month from now. So I hope these first 25 were useful, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.